episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by our friends over at the Atlantic Farms Medical Marijuana Dispensary of Portland, Maine, which is located right down the street from where I live and is known as being the medical cannabis dispensary that is also a gas station where you can fill your car up as well as buy things like snacks and drinks alongside medical marijuana products. Check them out over at theatlanticfarms.com. That's theatlanticfarms.com. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Friday, October 9th, 2020, and you're tuned in to episode 990 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. Mr. Tom Angel over at Marijuana Moment takes the final top spot on the week with a pickup of a tweet made by Maine Congresswoman Chellie Pingree, who just so happens to be my congressional representative, encouraging Mainers to read an article recently published here in the Portland Press Herald with tips on how to buy legal adult use marijuana, which goes on sale for the very first time today in the state. That's awesome news. That a sitting congresswoman would tweet out helpful advice on how to buy legal marijuana still feels pretty novel and is a great sign of the ever-advancing normalization of cannabis. Congresswoman Pingree's tweet was made yesterday and also encourages shoppers to make sure they know how their local shop is accepting payment. Swing over to Tom's piece for the full read. Also, it's about freaking time. Speaking of about freaking time, Leafly published a good comprehensive piece on Maine's new adult use market, which again opens up for the first time today. There are a large number of already licensed adult use shops and businesses around the state, but only a handful or so are actually open today, which Leafly helpfully has posted. There are also the expected supply issues that we tend to see in every new legal cannabis market. So if you're headed out to a Maine dispensary anytime soon, keep that in mind. I just have to say, after moving out of Colorado just before legal cannabis landed there, it feels pretty good to finally live in a state with sane marijuana laws. Today's final top story jumps just a couple of borders down from Maine to Massachusetts, where we have a relatively good story checking in on how the state's legal cannabis industry is faring. Regular listeners should remember that the Massachusetts adult use marijuana industry was not deemed an essential business during the state's coronavirus pandemic shutdown, so there was 2 months where the state's adult use operators just had to sit by and lose money. Given those early troubling days, it's good to hear that things are looking better in terms of adult use marijuana in the Bay State, with anecdotal reports of healthy customer demand and steady business. Those are the top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out in headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, the Atlantic Farms Medical Marijuana Dispensary of Portland, Maine, which is located right down the street from where I live and is known as being the medical cannabis dispensary that is also a gas station where you can fill up your car as well as buy things like snacks and drinks alongside medical marijuana products. The Atlantic Farms is just one of those medical marijuana shops that their patient customers just adore. When you step into the Atlantic Farms, you'll find a wide array of top quality legal medical marijuana products, all made right here in Maine and all available at the most reasonable price. That's the difficult line that the folks behind the Atlantic Farms have been able to walk. They have great stuff at great prices. If you're close enough to swing by for a visit, pop in and tell them that I said to say hello. You can learn more about the Atlantic Farms and check out their most current menu over at theatlanticfarms.com. That's theatlanticfarms.com. All right, time for the Blitz. The Florida State Supreme Court is considering a case this week involving a challenge to the state's system for how it handles legal medical marijuana, targeting specifically the requirement that licensed companies be fully vertically integrated. The plaintiff in this case, Tampa-based company Flora Grown, contends that vertical integration runs contrary to the 2017 ballot measure that first legalized medical cannabis. On Wednesday, the state Supreme Court heard a new round of arguments over the matter. If you're in Florida at all, this is certainly a storyline that you need to be tracking. The veterans group Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America is urging the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit to take up a case involving a challenge to the way that legal marijuana is scheduled by the federal government. The group filed an amicus brief with the Ninth Circuit supporting a lawsuit filed seeking rescheduling just last week by a group of activists and scientists, including noted industry researcher Dr. Sue Sisley. Kyle Yeager has more on this over Marijuana Moment, where you can also read the amicus brief yourself. Former U.S. Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle issued a statement this week supporting a move to legalize medical marijuana in his home state of South Dakota and encouraging voters to do the same. While Daschle was not much of an advocate for cannabis reform while he was in office, he has embraced the cause in recent years and is generally considered an industry ally. Mr. Kyle Yeager has another story on the day with a dip into New Mexico, where House Speaker Brian Egolf spoke during a live stream event this week with State Representative Javier Martinez and Emily Kaltenbach of the Drug Policy Alliance, during which he said that New Mexico legislators would be taking another crack at passing legal adult use marijuana during the next legislative session. There's a lot of support for legal cannabis in New Mexico, especially at the top level, with Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham loudly lamenting earlier this year the fact that her state won't have the economic boost provided for by legal cannabis. U.S. fighter Trevin Jones was recently stripped of a win after a drug test found the presence of marijuana metabolites in his system. Jones grabbed a technical knockout against opponent Timur Valiev during an August fight in Nevada, but after his drug test showed hot for cannabis, that win was stripped from his record, even though marijuana is perfectly legal in Nevada. That's just dumb. Adult use shoppers in Detroit, Michigan and surrounding cities now have access to on-demand cannabis delivery, as the company Lantern just rolled out its new delivery service just last week. Consumers in that area have had access to scheduled deliveries, but this is the first time they can get a legal app on their phone that allows for cannabis delivery on demand. And finally for today and for the week, Jesse Mondry over at the Canalog blog takes us out with a look at Oregon's Measure 109, a ballot measure that would legalize the therapeutic use of psilocybin mushrooms. If you're in Oregon, you will want to familiarize yourself with the particulars on this one so that you can tell others about it and make sure that you vote yes. Another good one to read in full, especially if you're tracking the development of legal psychedelics. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again Tuesday morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, Atlantic Farms, and to our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with Marijuana Today.
One take, Shay. One take.